to give us this subject speech. Let's give her the floor.
So, well, I'm talking about this patient-reported outcome topic. It's kind of a little bit out of the topic we're talking about, the Wei Wuchuang. So consult with Professor Wang, and he encouraged me to speak in Chinese, given the majority of the audience here are Chinese. And my slides are pretty much in English, so hopefully this is helpful, and I truly appreciate help from the simultaneous translation. So my topic is regarding utility of electronic patient-reported outcome in postoperative care. 我非常同意今天早上杨院士所讲到的。
So I agree with academician Yang's words. Said the biology is digital. So how can we make this data helpful for us? So we need the scientific research methods and the science. So through the work done with ePRO to help everyone to know that this can help us to know some important information in the sympathy or symptoms of the patients. And ePRO, probably you may know this concept. And in many medical and clinical study or trials, so the new medicine research in America, it is encouraged that these research staff should value not only the clinical experience, but also the patient's feelings and their experience. So the ePRO covers a large range of concepts and information. So the clinical outcome assessment or patient-reported outcomes, and also clinician-reported outcomes, or observer-reported outcomes, and performance outcomes are equally important. So without the clinician-reported outcomes or the family members' help, it will be difficult for the patients. And this has already been reached a consensus by patients and doctors. So many people confused some major basic concepts. Life quality is a large concept, including the core issue symptoms, because the occurrence and development of symptoms would affect the function of the patients, which will result in the change of the health condition of the patients. So the health condition of the patients will certainly play an important role in the postoperative operation outcome. So we need the support of evidence-based medicine and a lot of methodologies to grasp the information and interpret these information. And patients' experience in these areas are very subjective. And the patient's explanation or their description give us a lot of information for research. So I'm talking about the peri-operation outcome, but the methodologies, I think, might be also applicable to the minimal and non-invasive treatment. So it can interpret some of the symptoms of the patients so that the symptoms may be alleviated by doing this. For example, the clinical trial, the benefits of clinical trial. So is reflected in PRO data. And the methodology consideration is to make sure the content of the PRO and its indicators. And there are many methods or methodologies used in the experiment. So as the outcome in the clinical trials, so it can run the study or it can be reflected in the pragmatic trials or in some large-scale epidemiology data collection. So the collection of the variations of the PRO can be achieved through the longitudinal studies. For example, the symptom burden by disease, by therapy, and the function impairment, recovery, or timing and targets for the intervention because, for example, FDA is interested in these issues. So with these PRO data, we can collect a lot of information clinically. In order to collect this information or the experience of the patients, so the selection of the scale is very challenging. So for many scholars, in terms of symptom status or functional status or general health status or scales, can be varied according to your different purpose of research. For example, the hospital where I worked, we formulated a multi-symptom and functioning PRO measurement, which is very important for the cancer tumor patients and important for these patients during the process of the development of their disease. So by formulating this scale, we call that MADASI. And so the patients are asked to answer these questions and according to the scale. And by this scale, the functional variation can be captured or collected. And there are 13 core items, and we also have the item libraries. So we can expand the items to 90 items, as you may expect. So PRO research for the perioperative care is interesting. When we saw the MADASI scale, it might not be so desirable as we expected. So we designed different scales for different patients. So we had this following up and track to different patients so that we could get the information of different patients. For example, for those patients with thoracic surgery, and the situation is complicated, so we have a lot of different indicators and the items for them. So we can capture many different information about the patient's recovery for the thoracotomy and thoracic surgery, open thoracic surgery, so that we can get the miscellaneous information about the different ways of surgery. So minimal and non-invasive surgery and open surgery's effects on gynecological syndrome. And we can compare the different situation of different patients of different forms of surgeries in terms of pain, fatigue, the sleep quality, or abdominal motion. So these are very important for us to know from the patients. And also, we also evaluate the recovery of the function of the patients. For example, the somatic function or psychological function recovery. And we can see the difference between open surgery and minimal or non-invasive surgery. And also at discharge, what kind of symptom burden of the patients have. So is it correlated with the complications after the discharge? So according to the PRO data, so among 206 patients participated, 18% of them experienced a grade 2 or 4 complications after discharge within 30 days after surgery. 11% of the patients need to readmitted. So at the discharge, the two symptoms are meaningful. Patient reported moderate to severe abdominal bloating or abdominal cramping combined. So when we found these two symptoms are reported over 4 severity. So we need to be careful. They were found to be associated with a higher risk of 30-day postoperative grade complications. And this is the patient's function condition in 118 patients with gynecological tumors undergoing open surgery. And in the process of tracking this data, so activity is impacted the most after the operation, and the others are recovering gradually. So the evaluation of the function, in fact, is one part of the patient's evaluation by himself. So what might be the other reasons for us to see the real objective changes of physical function? So we also combine the objective and the subjective measure with TUGT in seconds and the Madasi interference. We integrate these two together. Which is objective, but it's not so feasible. Although the surgeons are expecting these outcomes, but the degrees of the accomplishment PRO shows a better result. And we found that walking is very much correlated with the items reported in Madasi. So we can trust this interference from 0 to 10. By doing this, we know the situation of the patients. And PRO can also use to anticipate the possibilities of the post-operation treatment For example, 5 weeks is the critical point, and after 5 weeks, probably has fairly close relevance to the pro data. And from this report, we can see in many items, it has some interpretation of these data, so that we know the patient's post-operative treatment. And they tend to, and we can see that PRO can give us this evidence or data to support our following treatment or solutions. So in terms of methodologies, and we can use randomized clinical trial, it a golden standard, but not the only approach to provide evidence of an intervention with clear limitations on time, sample, ethical, and cost. So the real world in terms of organization is easy, but the data pro might be challenging, might face a lot of challenge. So court with pro interference after the operation, we have done some RCT and have published some papers internationally to tracking the situation of the patients and therefore to give the correct or due interference. So what the conclusion of using or the outcome of using PROs? So we have a very ample and sufficient clinical research and methodology calculating, so its feasibility and practicability are evidenced, and it can give us strong evidence to make our decision. And finally, the PRO in the current state of development is sufficiently mature to justify their use in the evaluation of oncology therapies with the correct skills or methodologies to interpret the data. And its contribution to the clinical research are very in terms of precision, efficiency, standardization, and international. And by using the standardized scale, can help the international colleagues to get a good result or impression. So in the future, hopefully we can cooperate with each other in terms of minimal and non-invasive treatment and what the benefits of the patients. And I believe in the future, these are the information or data we need. And with the correspondent interference, we can offer the patients with a better outcome with this evidence. Thank you.